7 Days to Die console edition as you know it is coming to an end. Yep, that's not clickbait, that is actually a very real fact. With the news that the new 7 Days to Die console edition port being developed by the Fun Pimps is coming this July 25th, we are officially now on the brink of the discontinuation of the original 7 Days to Die console edition made for the PS4 and Xbox One by Iron Galaxy Studios back in 2016. Now, although this is great news for some, especially those like myself who for years have been waiting patiently for the original 7 Days to Die console version to be updated, it for others marks the end of an era and also potentially leaves them unsatisfied. It's no secret that the vast majority of the console edition community are not all next-gen players, so when we got the news that only the PS5 and Xbox Series X/X consoles would be receiving this new version, it was a huge disappointment for some to say the least. So today I wanted to take a moment to lay the original 7 Days to Die console edition and its community to rest and answer what I believe to be the 3 still most asked questions regarding 7 Days to Die console edition, so enjoy. So let's jump back. It's July 16th, 2013 and a relatively small new game developer called the Fun Pimps, founded by Joel Hunick, this guy right here, and Christian Lang, whose face apparently just doesn't exist on the internet, so we'll imagine he looks just equally as handsome and jacked. Anyway, these dudes create a 30-day long Kickstarter campaign for their new survival horde crafting game called 7 Days to Die. The game involves players fighting against endless hordes of zombies in a post-apocalyptic world, scavenging for materials, building and surviving. Throughout the duration of the Kickstarter campaign, multiple updates on the development are shared, and even some content creators are given exclusive access to the game pre-alpha to produce content on it to continue building hype and interest around the game and its Kickstarter campaign, which succeeds greatly. Within the 30 days from July 16th to August 15th, 2013, the campaign manages to receive almost 14,000 backers, raising a little over $500,000, which was $300,000 more than the Fun Pimps' initial $200,000 goal. The game also becomes #1 on the Steam Greenlit section and officially gets greenlit on Steam after getting over 75,000 yes votes, 8,340 followers, and 8,700 favorites. Now, in case you don't know what getting greenlit on Steam means, basically if a game is greenlit, the developers of the said game can publish their game on the Steam platform. So for a game developer, it's a very huge deal. Now, knock knock, it's August 16th and people who backed the game via Kickstarter and PayPal are now finally playing the first alpha version of the game called Alpha 1. This version is quite bare but retains many core features, structures, and even sound effects we still have in the game today. So the first alpha is generally well received and enjoyed, with a few saying it's not very appealing in regards to graphics, but nothing too critical, thankfully. Now, after Alpha 1 is released, the game continues to receive a steady flow of fixes, new features, and support to the point where it becomes successful enough for a console port to be suggested, and that's where our good friends Telltale become involved. See, now it's 2016, and although by this point the Fun Pimps had proven they could develop a successful fun crafting survival game, that didn't exactly mean that they wanted to just drop everything they were doing on the PC version and start working on a console port. Plus, even if they did, they would have a couple of massive obstacles to overcome beforehand. The first, and probably the most important, being the fact that the game still wasn't even finished and was still needing more work done to it. So remember how a moment ago I mentioned that after Alpha 1 was released, the game continued to receive a steady flow of fixes, new features, and support? Well, that hadn't actually really stopped. By this point, the game was on its 15th alpha, and many of the original players and Kickstarter backers were actually beginning to wonder how long it was going to remain in the alpha state. As a small side note for context, if you somehow don't know, the game is actually still in alpha, with the latest version on PC being Alpha 21.2 as of recording this video, of course, on the 23rd of June. So yeah, it's been in alpha a long time, and only after now over a decade is it about to exit alpha. Now, the second obstacle the Fun Pimps would have to overcome if they wanted to port 7 Days to Die to consoles would be the price of bringing the game to consoles. See, many of us who have never worked in the video game industry might not know this, but getting a game published onto a platform like Xbox, PlayStation, or Nintendo can be a costly process that can easily cost millions upon millions of dollars. There are multiple different things publishers have to pay for, such as development costs for the staff to make the game, licensing for the game, marketing for the game, and finally, of course, distribution for the game. With all that in mind, you can probably understand and see why a console port of the game wouldn't have been a smart move for the Fun Pimps back in 2016, considering they still hadn't even finished the original PC version yet. So what happened? Well, Telltale came along and made an offer. By 2016, Telltale was an already well-established video game developer with dozens of successful IPs under their belt, such as The Walking Dead, Tales from the Borderlands, Minecraft Story Mode, and many more. So Telltale, having the money, bought the full console publishing rights from the Fun Pimps and was officially officially the publisher for the game. They then brought in another video game developer called Iron Galaxy and gave them the task of creating the console port of the game. It all seemed like a pretty solid idea. The Fun Pimps would have more money to continue funding work on the original PC version of 7 Days to Die and would have their game being promoted to a much more vast and wide open audience of players since it would be on consoles. Iron Galaxy, the studio brought in to obviously make the port for the game, wasn't new to porting games, with them successfully porting well over 30 plus games since starting back in 2009, and it wasn't like the wildly successful Telltale was going to go bankrupt anytime soon, right? December 13th, 2017, the last update gets released for the console version of the game. By this time, the game had received 18 updates since its launch, now over 50 months ago, and things were looking promising. Although many of the original issues still remained, including the terrible textures, horrendous draw distance, and more, the game was slowly but surely being improved upon and new features were being added. However, little did the console community know that this update was sadly going to be our last. On September 21st, 2018, Telltale Games announced via their official Twitter this statement. Today, Telltale Games made the difficult decision to begin a majority studio closure following a year marked by insurmountable challenges. A majority of the company's employees were dismissed earlier this morning, with a small group of 25 employees staying on to fulfill the company's obligations to its board and partners. And that's the end. Telltale goes bankrupt and many of their games, including the 7 Days to Die console port, get abandoned, and that's what went wrong. It isn't until a couple of years later that thankfully the Fun Pimps managed to buy back the rights for the 7 Days to Die console edition, which brings us of course to now. So now that we've discussed what went wrong with the 7 Days to Die console edition, let's discuss the second thing I know many within the 7 Days to Die console edition community are curious about, which is, will we get the new version of 7 Days to Die for free? And the answer is no. Ultimately, the Fun Pimps don't have any legal obligation to give their new port of the game away for free to owners of the older version, and if I'm being honest, I think that's completely fair. For one, the vast majority of us have no doubt gotten our money's worth from playing the old console version, regardless of how busted up it was. We've also got to remember that Telltale are the people who messed up our version of 7 Days to Die console edition, not the Fun Pimps. The Fun Pimps have spent no doubt lots and lots of money creating this new port of the game and deserve to capitalize on it. It's not just an update to the older version, it's an entire new game. Now with that being said, that doesn't just mean that the Fun Pimps have completely forgotten about us old console players. In fact, just the other day they announced that when the new 7 Days to Die console edition launches, players who own the old Telltale version digitally will get a 25% discount on the new version, which I honestly think is awesome. So lastly for today, let's answer the big question of what will happen to the old version of 7 Days to Die. Well, in regards to this question and to others related to the old console edition, the Fun Pimps actually put out a statement saying the following. What about the old console version? Due to the significant technical differences between old and current console hardware, we will not be upgrading the legacy version. Legacy owners will have to buy the new title. However, we are working closely with Sony and Microsoft to provide a discount to digital legacy owners on their purchase of the new console edition. We made the decision early on to focus on a new version of the game that is unified with our PC version, and our efforts to update the game post-launch will be entirely focused on that version. What about the old console version's availability? Due to product and branding confusion, we will be delisting the legacy console version from digital storefronts when the new version releases. You will still be able to play your old copy if you own it, but no future purchases of the legacy edition will be possible. Will I be able to use my old saves on the new version? No, you will of course be able to continue to use your old saves on the legacy version if it is installed, but saves will not carry over as they are not compatible with the numerous new changes. And that is it. The past, the present, and the future of the 7 Days to Die Legacy Console Edition. Wow, this video did end up being a lot longer than I initially anticipated, but I'm really glad that I made it, and I hope that some of the questions that I talked about in today's video are questions that you've been wondering, and hopefully questions now that you have answers to. Now, I don't want to end this video on a downer, so I'll leave you all with a very simple question, which is, are you looking forward to the new 7 Days to Die Console Edition or not? I want to say thank you so much for watching. If you did get this far in the video, you are a complete champ, and God love you. If you did go to enjoy this video and appreciate all the effort and time I put into it, please consider sharing it with your friends and family, dropping a like or subscribing. All three of these things I promise do help out a bunch. I'm also hoping to cover a lot more 7 Days to Die content going forward, so please let me know if you have anything you'd like to hear me talk about. And other than that, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you all later on.